Welcome to Junk to Jewels podcast with Georgette Beck. Thank you so much for listening in or viewing. I know you're either on YouTube with us or listening on any of the audio platforms. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And I'm so excited for today's episode. I have a special friend, Ileana, and I've known her for quite a long time. And we just recently reconnected due to my new book that's just come out. So I've officially joined being, an author. Junk to Jewels, a journey from brokenness and despair and beauty and delight, just had its release day on Amazon. So go check it out at Amazon. And we're so excited. Now, Ileana, welcome to the show. I want to share your bio a bit with folks because we were actually authors many years ago when we self-published together, which we'll share about that with our listeners and viewers. But let me tell you a little bit about Ileana. So she's an author, and she was diagnosed with panic disorder as a teenager. And the focus of her writing is to bring awareness to mental health issues. She is motivated by both her personal and professional careers. And as a former paralegal and administrative assistant for children and family services, she understands the negative effects of mental health struggles. Throughout her life, Ileana has been the voice of countless special needs families. She has provided advocacy, education, and resource support. And her first novel, On the Edge of Truth, it's called Edge of Truth, brought to light the impact of trauma caused by tragedy. And in her workbook, Fearless Living, and it's Fearless Living, I like that.
Fearless Living, and there's a reason.
Yeah, I like that. Fearless. Love it. Yeah. She shares her personal experiences with anxiety, as well as provides practical and faith-based approaches for the reader to find inner healing. And I just finished the book, and it's so awesome, hands-on tools. And both her novel and her self-care book can all be found on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So that is awesome. Welcome to the Junk to Jewels podcast, Ileana Leon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love it.
So I'm so excited. Yes, God hooks people up in the most amazing of ways. And we met originally at Morningside Church here in Port St. Lucie, Florida. And then we, knew each other on the outer realms from different Bible studies and things like that. But we really got to know each other when we did a writers group. You had popped in a few times when I was in the session. I self-published with one group. We did a book called Launching Out. And then you had contributed pieces too. So what was that book's name? Do you remember?
It was Walking on Water. And it's based, I think it was Christian stories and poems, a collection of Christian stories and poems.
Yes. And that was the part two. Like that was the second one, right? They did for the group. They kept another series going. So that's really beautiful. And so technically we were authors way back then, but then you took your dream further and you actually have 2 published books, and you gifted me this one, The Fearless Living, and you have On the Edge. You have your copy, right? On the
Edge of Truth.
Yes. Yep. So let's first off, I always like to find out where people come from and, kind of the background of who they were as that brought them to this point we know you today, like right now. Here you are, a published author, writer, and things like that. Tell us about your family. Where are you from originally? And let's wind back to, where you were born.
So I was born in Cuba, communist Cuba. I was born in communist Cuba. And my parents took me out of Cuba at 4 years of age. Okay. I remember that I had to leave my favorite doll, the only doll I ever owned in Cuba, to a little girl because my parents said, where we're going, you're going to have a lot of dolls. I don't have a lot of memories of Cuba. And it's weird because I have memories, but they're in black and white, if that makes any sense. And actually talking to people about trauma and things like that, and therapists, they have explained to me that is just part of it. It was a dark period in my life because what your parents go through, you as a child go through. So, that's the reason they're in black and white. And then we went to Madrid. My aunt was a nun, she passed away. And she had some connections in Spain, in Madrid. And so they kind of helped us out. My parents worked very long hours. So I was left at a girls' boarding school for hours. They would come home dark, 8, 9 o'clock at night and pick me up. During that time, unfortunately, I saw a lot of abuse. The nuns were just very, very mean to the girls. And, I was young. I was little. And these girls were older and they were treated horribly. And it made me very nervous because I didn't speak much. I was afraid. I was also a very sickly child. I had rheumatic fever and a heart murmur. So I spent a lot of time getting penicillin shots every day and being, prodded and it got me very, how can I say, it got me very nervous about, being in a doctor's office or even everything was scaring me because there was so much going on and I didn't understand a lot of it. I didn't know why these nuns would look at you in the face and say, you need to behave or you're going to go to hell, and things like that. So the fear was very bad. And that, I think, is where my anxiety began. And then one time while I was sleeping, we had a one-room little apartment. I slept in the living room. My parents had like a separate room, but I slept in the living room. There were gypsies. And back then, gypsies would climb, like, I think we're on the 4th floor, and they would come in through windows and they would take children or they would steal. So as I was sleeping, I saw those, yes. And I couldn't scream because I was so scared because I remember if I scream, then probably they'll take me. So God was really protecting me with my fear at the moment.
Yeah.
But in the morning, they left. They got what they wanted and they left. We realized they had been following us. We had gone to the park the day before and we had a little radio and my dad had his watch on. That's all they took, which was amazing, but that's all they took. So, fast forward to, I was 7 years old when I left Madrid to go to USA. I went to New Jersey. My father left Spain because of health. So I arrived here not knowing language.
How did they get to know to go to New Jersey? Did they have family or friends here?
Yeah. My uncle was already here. His brother was already here. So they figured, let's try to get our family together here. Plus my father had health issues and snow. Even though we went to New Jersey, we figured it would have been better climate because the doctor was like, you can't stay here. And it happened again, but let me not go there yet.
You were in New Jersey.
Yeah, I was in New Jersey and the language was my biggest barrier, and it makes it hard, Throughout my life, I've moved a lot. And I think a lot of that brings the anxiety on because just when you're getting comfortable somewhere, you switch to another school, And in New Jersey, I was switched from public school because I was bullied as a little girl to a private Catholic school again with the nuns. So that was not fun either, So after that, by 13 years of age, we moved to Miami. And that was due to my father's health as well. He was hospitalized a few times, asthma. Doctor said, if you do not find warmer climate, you are going to die.
That's very directive, isn't it?
It's extremely. He was extremely sick. And, when we got to Miami, we didn't have family here. We're the only ones actually who stayed and went to Miami and stayed, where the rest of my family is in New Jersey. So, beginning a life in a public school after being in a Catholic, very strict environment was shocking to me.
Culture shock.
Culture shock. A lot of culture shock, especially in Miami. So, I was quiet. I was a total introvert. I hardly spoke, but I got very good at writing because ever since I could hold a pencil, I had been writing. That was my way of entertaining myself. I'm an only child. I don't know if I said that before. I'm an only child. So how did I entertain myself? Writing stories with lots and lots of family. Comfort that didn't exist. So I started, writing more. And
now, did you read too? Did you read?
I read a lot. Oh, yeah.
Me too.
I devoured books. I wasn't so good at math. That was one thing. That's where I struggled mostly. But reading, I got a quick, very good vocabulary, moved very quickly in that respect. So then fast forward to 15 years of age, I'm living in Miami, and I had my first boyfriend. Well, when you're Cuban and you have a boyfriend, we don't date just to date. We date to get married. So there's all that pressure that is put on you at 15 years of age, and it's, it's a serious relationship. So I took it very seriously and, fell head over heels. Blonde, good looking guy. And I was just like gaga over him. But he was abusive. And I found that out very
No,
quickly.
dang. How dare that package get ruined? Golly, man. Didn't it?
Sad, sad.
It
But
is for your first one there like that. I'm
I
sorry.
know.
That is so. Yeah, you learned that. So you learned that as you were courting, or as it got more serious.
No, it was that we only were together for a year, which I thank the Lord every day because during that year, he put a gun to my head, his father's gun, and said, if you leave me, I will kill you. And then he would call me on the phone and play these mind games where, look, you hear my gun, my dad's gun? If I'm going to kill myself if you leave me. So that was the game he played back and forth with me, which was, I was already a person that had very low self-esteem, with everything. And now you had this guy who I was holding on to because he kept telling me, you're never going to find anybody to love you, and he would make me feel bad about myself. Like he was dating me for almost like a favor. So that was really rough,
Yeah, it is.
But, God had a plan and all that because eventually I met my husband and, we got married and he was wonderful. He still is wonderful.
And now this is Frank?
Yes, it is.
So you met Frank in Miami?
I met Frank in Miami. We were at a club. Neither of us were, we just met at a club, which is strange because you say, oh my goodness, you're still together and you met at a club. Yeah, we did. And we dated 6.5 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All the time. 6.5 years. But you're probably going to school too, or were you in college?
I met Frank on my last year of high school. So he went to the prom with me, my high school sweetheart, So yeah. And he wanted to have like a really decent career before we got married. And so we put, some of that before actually getting married. But then his job moved us to, once we got married, his job moved us to Port St. Lucie in the 90s. There was nothing here.
Yeah, it was a small city.
Shock really set in at that point. It was just one house and then lots of land. Mm-hmm. Well, this city girl went into a deep depression.
Yeah,
my anxiety went
quite different than Miami. Yeah.
My panic attacks started coming left and right. So it was very difficult. And our marriage, the first year of marriage, was very rocky because I wanted to go back to Miami. I felt the security of my parents. I had never left home, good little Catholic Christian, girl, just, Cuban girl who never left home until she got married. And now
you were uprooted. You were uprooted and the roots were dangling and it was painful and scary. Golly, and a new relationship. All that, like the new commitment, new land. You're in a new land.
It was rough. But, God had a plan and all that. And such a beautiful plan. And I'll give you my testimony. Basically, we had a fight, my husband and I, big fight. And I bolted out the door. And I'm not an outdoorsy girl, especially that. I was a city girl. I didn't like mosquitoes.
You're a book girl.
I didn't like woods. But I was so upset that I started walking on the side of my house. And it was all wooded, And I'm screaming at the Lord going, why did you bring me here? Because what you don't know is that first year, my car burned down as I was driving. My back went out on my first job, and I ended up with severe back problems. I mean, anything and everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And here I was screaming at the Lord, and this is my testimony, and whether you believe it or not, whether people believe it or not, that's fine. But the Lord, I heard an audible voice. No, I can't say I've heard it outside of me, but I did hear it. And I heard clearly, you're here because you need to know. I felt the Lord. Yes. Arm around me. Jesus just put his arm around me and walked with me in that road. And I tell you, I knelt down on the floor in that wall, that road. And I said, I'm yours.
I love it.
And of course I did that at Morningside later on, publicly, like you're supposed to, but that was my moment. And things didn't get perfect right away, but now I had a thirst and a hunger to learn more about the Lord. And my husband, who was not Catholic, he was Methodist, would pick up his Bible every night and read it. And I was like, okay, I said my little prayers and whatever. my rosary. And one day I said, what is he reading? So I picked up my Bible and I started to read it. And I had a wonderful chiropractor, which I could say was my mentor, who brought me to a place of understanding what it is to be loved and to feel the grace of the Lord, because he died for me. And for someone with a low self-esteem to hear that he died for me, that was huge. That changed my life.
Yeah. Oh, I relate. Well, when you read the book, when people read Junk to Jewels, they'll understand we have that similar transformation where God showed up for us when no one else saw us and we cried out. We were on our own and he showed up in that space, and only God could understand what was in our heart and what we were praying. So then things happened. And yeah, I love that. Ileana, I love that. So then it changed. You had to walk with Jesus. And yeah, like you said, life problems don't just disappear, but he's with us in it. We have help.
Yes. But I still had anxiety. Anxiety was still a part of me, a big part of me, because yes, I believed in the Lord and I was saved and all that, but I had panic disorder. And it's something that I needed to work through. You know, a lot of people get healed. They do. Yeah. But I didn't. And that was okay, because God was working through the imperfect to help others, you know?
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, so let's see, where was I?
So you're your children, you have two children.
Yeah. Okay. So I got married and I had two beautiful children. I have my son, Joel, and Joel has autism and Tourette's, but he is fully functional. He runs an IT business. So we're very proud of the work that he's done. Very hard years with him, especially with understanding Tourette's. I got very involved in mental health. I had already dealt with that with children and family services to some degree, but now it was affecting my family. So as a paralegal, as someone who loves research, I always say, I think I could get a PhD in just living, which, because then the Lord sent other families to me and I became a voice. My friend Doreen, who passed away, we would team up and go to IEP meetings and things like that to help families who had children with disabilities.
That's beautiful, because first off, especially when you first go down that road. Now, I'm not coming, I might be a little bit now coming from that information, but not. It's so overwhelming for a parent when there's any issues with their child, but something that is above their understanding until they learn it themselves. And I love it that you were an advocate for parents to be their coach and their cheerleader. I love that. And to guide them through the process. It's so scary and stressful, but to have someone there who knows, like, you're the light. You're like, follow me. I've learned this and I can help you stand up for yourself and your child. And that's awesome. That's so beautiful.
We became part of the National Tourette's Association and the Florida chapter. We got very involved. I learned about autism. I learned about Tourette's. I've learned about a lot of different mental health, which at the time I didn't know God was preparing me slowly for this book and preparing me for all the things that he has in store, helping parents and things like that. Yeah. So then I had my daughter 6 years later, Katerina, and I'm going to be a grandma very soon. So I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So she lives in Louisiana. She's married to a pastor. So she's a pastor's wife. And she also, which is amazing to me, has a job at a special needs teacher. So it's incredible how God works things out,
Yes. Yeah. And your heart is so attuned to these things and these concerns and these challenges specific. They're very unique challenges that your heart already has the love, the capacity for it, the wisdom, God's so good like that. I love that.
He really is.
And just let's reiterate, it's not an easy path. Like you had a very interesting path to walk, but God was pursuing you, and God showed up, and he was with you, and the person you met, to marry, and he got you out of a wrong destiny choice. Like that's what happens to a lot of us, because I had learned about generational repeat, and it's on both sides, the God path or the opposite path, where people just don't know their true calling or purpose or value, things like that. But I love how he's restoring and using you as a mighty power and a heart for others like that. Yeah. So 2 children and a grandbaby on the way. I love that.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. And then is that when after he led you to the writers?
Well, what happened was my mother passed away. Being an only child, you lose your mom, and you lost your mom. You know how that feels.
Yes.
The emptiness
And
is
dad.
incredible. And I was going into a deep depression, and I heard about a writing guild. That's where I started at Morningside at the Writing Guild, because I knew that writing was something that would help me. And so I started at that writing guild. That was, I think, in 2012 after my mom passed away. It's been 13 years my mom has been gone.
Wow.
And basically, I started writing my manuscript there for On the Edge of Truth, while we were also doing the project for Walking on Water. And, and that was great. I enjoyed it. It helped me so much to process my mom's death and things like that. And then I published, and that was fine. And it's a wonderful story. It actually takes place during 9/11. 9/11 really, I know I wasn't in New York, but my family worked in New York. So it was very personal to me when I tried calling over there and I couldn't get through. And I was watching it on, my daughter was 1 year old. She was in the playpen, and I'm watching the whole thing go down on TV, and it was just horrible. So I wanted a story that would bring hope in tragedy. And that's what it is. It's hope and tragedy. And I like spy novels. So it's a faith-based romance that has espionage in it, which is very rare because you don't see that much. I know. I
like you because like that.
Yeah, it's something different, and I think I think people will like it. I've heard some of the reports that it's interesting and it keeps you going. So anyway, God wasn't done with me, and actually, he started to talk to me again, and he's like, "Hey, now you published On the Edge of Truth, and that's fantastic. That's great, wonderful. What about what I told you to publish?" And I went, what are you talking about? And he's like, "Oh, yes, you do, because you've been researching for years. You have all the research. You have the interviews in your computer. Why haven't you published?" So I said, "Okay, Lord." And that's what I always
do. The deeper one.
Yes, sir.
The deeper one.
You're calling me to really step out there, because now this is my personal journey.
Yeah.
This is my flaws. This is my insecurity, my daily dealings with anxiety. And I'm going to put all that out there.
Yes.
You got to be kidding me.
Yes, yeah. That's what he does with us.
He wasn't kidding me. But how did it get there? I went to a study. My friend Kim Duran wrote a book called Pack Your Suitcase. We love Kim. Anyway. So pack your suitcase. So I went to a small, at first I didn't want to go, I'll be honest. And I told her, no. I had the book, but I didn't want to read it. I didn't want nothing to do with it, because I knew God was saying, you got to get through this. You got to get through the ugly. And so eventually she'd had a smaller group, and I'm a small group girl because I didn't want to be anywhere in the limelight. I just want to be quiet in my little corner. And so I went, and I had a breakthrough, an incredible breakthrough. God took me through a very difficult time in my life. It's in the book. Something that may not affect anybody, but it had affected me in a very deep way that I didn't realize how deep it had affected me. Mm-hmm. And so I worked through that. And after that, that's when I was like, okay, I'm ready to publish Fearless Living. And it's fearless living. And that's a play on words, because to me, fearless people are people who they bungee jump. They do all these amazing things that, I could only dream of doing because I'm not that type of person. But fearless living is because people with anxiety, we fear living. We fear what life throws at us. We fear sometimes what daily living looks like. People with agoraphobia don't go out of their house. There's so many different mental health things that keep you from being who God created you to be.
All out. Yes. Yes.
So that's why I said this book is fearless living. But it's also for anybody who, we all fear something. Let's be honest,
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I read the book, and I I always thought I was an extrovert all my life because I was the one that would go and do things and events and things. And then work life, the networker galore, I could work a room. But then later, as I got older, I learned I was 50-50, that I needed to be by myself just as much as I was out and being with people, because I got energy from the by myself, journaling, reading, praying, contemplating, and dreaming, and then go out. But I actually make plans to do and like go big. Like I got to, fill up the calendar for all the things to get out there. And then I actually cancel. Like I don't go. So I go 2 steps and come back and then go and come back. So no, it's a real thing. There's anxiety because of fear of loss of love or fear of criticism, judgment. If you had any of that in your background, it's really hard to show up and be vulnerable. And I learned this too through small groups, Ileana, when we were doing small groups and Celebrate Recovery and things like that, that work in a room for me is less scary than having people in my house. Like last night, 2 nights ago, y'all came over. We had the book release for Junk to Jewels. And that's a more vulnerable space for me because people are seeing you. So we're all in this together in some way, shape, or form. So yes, this really helped me too. So, and I love how you have the questions in here to work through. You call it the tool, what was the exact?
The honesty box. You got to step into the honesty box. Yes. And
tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you got to be honest with yourself and with the Lord.
Yes, you do.
So what I did is I tell you to get in a imaginary box with a mirror in front. And I actually ask you to draw it out so that you can see it, so you can visualize it. And you're going to be in there the whole time. So no excuses. Those walls you build up, they're going to come down. I had to do it. I did it. I brought the wall down, and I think it's helpful because you realize as you go through the journey, you're not alone,
It's very helpful.
I have a chapter where I talk about Jesus had fear as a human being. To me, that was shocking when I was doing the research and I saw that he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he was crying out and he was saying, Lord, if it's your will, take this from me. He was sweating drops of blood. I did some research. There is a condition where you can sweat due to so much anxiety, drops that come out like blood. It's very strange. I can't even pronounce the name, but it's because of the anxiety level. And he even had an angel come to help him. So he understands our anxiety,
Yeah. Yeah. And he did it. He did it for us, each and every one of us. He understands our pains. And anxiety, people think, like I sometimes think, my like when I talk, because I have some anxiety I struggle with and work through daily. It's each of us carry something different. It's not a small or a large, I'm not this or I'm not that, I'm only this. No, each of us has something that we all bear. That's why we need each other. That's why we need community. And your book is it's so helpful and important for each of us to have a page we can turn to and read about someone else on the path of something similar. And we even learn from other people's issues when we're in a group setting of what they're overcoming and working through to overcome, because we get a nugget too. We get something that we could apply for our own situation. But yeah, God, so I remember when I first cried out, God did a rescue. He began the rescue in my life. I didn't even know it, but he used someone that I had cared about to hand me a CD and with lyrics and words and music. God will reach you where you're at with your love language, with your language. And I love how he uses words, and he does speak. Like for me, I heard it's from within this. I heard a couple times I had that experience in my life too. And I talk about it in my book too. God wills, like it might not be audible, but you definitely know something, like your intuition. Is coming up from your heart, and a truth. And just journal, like write that down. So yeah, do you want to talk about the power of journaling, like writing things? Because it is.
Oh, yes.
Breakthrough.
It's so important. Like I journal. Journaling is so important because what you might not be able to work through, maybe, you can write it down. Like I even have a rant page, I think, in the book where just rant, just say, and get it all out, because it's so important. And I talk about negative emotions. When you have anxiety, you have a lot of other negative emotions that happen, like shame and guilt and, all those things. Unforgiveness is one of the things that can hold you back.
Let's talk about that, because in my journey too, God woke me up in the middle of a night to have me read a journal and brought me back to memories when I was 12 years old. So if God is going to do that to bring your attention to something, you bet your butt. And research backs this up, right? Unforgiveness blocks you from growth. You can actually block your own forgiveness from God, number one, but number two, your own growth to healing. And I had to ask for forgiveness. Something I had learned about in my family, that hurt turned to unforgiveness and then resentment and rebellion. Like I just put walls up and then protection. And then God was, he's going to undo those layers. He's going to get to it. But speak on the unforgiveness, because that's huge.
Yeah. Basically, that was one of the issues in when I had my breakthrough, was I had to forgive someone for something they had done. And I didn't know how, because in my memory, I couldn't remember. I can't even see his face. It's all blocked. So I kept saying, Lord, I need to see. I will never, this is a doctor. Let's put it that way. It's a dentist. Okay. And I couldn't get myself to that point. And in that healing process, he said, I was there with you. I saw what happened. You were not alone. So you can forgive, even if you can't see this person. So I did. I got to a point where I was like, I forgave. And that released so much in me. That's why in the book, I say forgiveness is a tool as well as the other tools I put in there. And I get you to a place where if you can't forgive the person because you think you can't forgive the person because the person isn't around anymore, you still can forgive the person. There are ways to forgive. If it's a toxic situation and you can't be in front of this person, you could still forgive. It's a heart issue. It's something that you do, and it sets you free in an incredible way,
Yes, totally. In our master's program, there was a whole section. Of course, there's going to be, it was Master in Human Services, Marriage, Family Counseling. And of course there is, because forgiveness is huge in so many ways, but in daily relationships, knowing how to have a communication that's healthy, knowing how not to stuff things down. You can actually have the empty chair where you sit down and you put the empty chair in front of you and that's in the chair. Because even especially, if people go either you go through a divorce and things, and maybe there is no communicating with the person. Well, have them in a chair, or if they passed away, or if it's toxic, you're not going to call them up or go, try to connect if it's very toxic or unsafe, but you can work through it in the safety of your own home. In a marriage, if you can't talk to your spouse yet, or you can't go there to those deeper levels, have a chair session.
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned that. I don't know if I mentioned it in the book, but that's something I did. I had the first boyfriend. That's how I forgave him. Years later, put him on a chair. It was in a conference, a women's conference, where they did it.
Oh, wow.
And it's so helpful, so
it is.
Tools are so helpful. I really believe they set you free, and
it is. And then a lot of times forgiveness, for me too, I didn't even know this, but God had to catch me up on it. And now forgive yourself, Georgette, because he had me go through this whole journey. I had to ask for forgiveness from a lot of people, because I was owning up to where I failed or where I faltered and where my weakness or sin was, or, and then he's like, and forgive you. And of course I forgave others too, but he's like, and yourself. And because I was the hardest on me. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you either and understand that I died for us all, I died for you on the cross and I already forgave you. If you're going to not forgive you, what are you saying? You're just not receiving my gift. Exactly. And that, of course, so then I had to work on myself, forgiving me for how I let myself down or how I perceived I let myself down. But so I love it that couple of things. First of all, I just wanted to say the nuns. My dad was a little boy back in the day. You heard about this too. He was a little boy in a Catholic school, and they abuse the children. I mean, physical abuse and just emotional. How sad you're in it's religious. So not all religious is unloving. Let's just say that.
Right.
But just because you're in a church doesn't mean you have the love of God. Let's say that. Because it is a relationship.
Yes.
That's as a little girl I
learned. Yes.
And me too. I loved God all my life. And I loved God, but it wasn't until I understood I had to receive him, Jesus, accept him as my Lord and Savior. And then for me, I even had another part. Once I got saved, I did all the talking. And then when I had my life blew up and fell out and I'm calling on the floor of a closet for help, someone answered. And that's when it became a real relationship, because someone heard me and all of a sudden things are happening. And I was having a new journey and a new life. And then I learned to listen. I learned to read my Bible, but listen and not just say, oh God, this is so good. No. And then he answers. He's the God who sees us in those places. So, yeah. And so the other thing too. Okay. Community's key. You showed up even when you were afraid to. And that for me too, my healing happened in community where people saw me that cared for me. And they ended up being family before my family could be. So a couple of things too. I love that. You're in community. You showed up even when you were afraid. You took that step of faith. But God met you every step. Anything he asked you to do, he was with you, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's something that it's not in the book, but I'll share it, because I'm the introvert who God made an extrovert. Okay. And that's because I always wanted to be in the background. I wanted to be a fashion designer who just designed clothes. I didn't want all the fanfare. I didn't want any of that. I just wanted to be in the background. But God has a sense of humor. He really does.
Yes, he does.
In Morningside, there was a play. Remember the big plays we used to have, those big ones?
Yeah, I was in one.
Okay. I don't know if you were in the one with the angels on Heaven's Thrones, when all the angels were doing the kind of like the dance. Okay, well, I choreographed that in the background where I wanted to be. But my head angel, who did a little bit different than the others, got sick. Guess who had to go up front and do it? And I'm like, no, Lord, I can't do this. I can't do this.
Yes, you
want to hold it, and you're going to do it.
Can.
And I did, and little by little, I think if we talk about trauma, I think part of my not wanting to be speaking, in front of people had to do with when we lived in New Jersey. We had how they have the Polish club or the this club. We had a Cuban.
We're Polish. Yeah, I knew that.
So we had a Cuban club because we were very few in New Jersey. And we always had events. And one Mother's Day event, my grandmother, which is where I think I get some of my writing skills from, my grandmother on my father's side, she would write poetry. And she wanted us to recite it. And I used to recite poetry. So the day was coming. And I'm like, where's the poem? Where's the poem? You're not giving me enough time to read this poem. I'm the youngest of all my cousins. I'm the baby. So here I am, probably, 12, maybe 12 years old. And I didn't have enough time to memorize it. And here I'm standing in front of a hall full of people. And I can't remember the words. And I just started crying and I ran off. That, I think, put a damper on me wanting to be, out there. But then I found out my dad used to sing at the radio in Cuba. And my uncle came after and said, hey, don't feel bad. Your dad for the words to a song in national radio.
It happened. So that skit I was in, I played the devil. I played in New York with the New York accent with the leather jacket. And do you know, I forgot a whole bunch of lines. And then I'm looking at everyone on stage and they had to fly with me. Like they had to work around the parts I missed. But it worked out. But that's what happened. Like God will work it out. But we're going to wrap it up. And this was really awesome to talk about these things. What is your favorite book? Now, is it the Bible? I'm sure it's going to be that, but is there any other?
It's the Bible, but apart from the Bible, obviously, like you and I are avid readers. Yeah. I have loved Karen Kingsbury's series. I am a romantic by heart.
Me
So I love
too.
her series. And I love Nicholas Sparks. I love, The Notebook. I'm a romantic. That's what I love to read. It's either espionage or romance.
Oh my gosh, you and I call myself the Hallmark girl because I always love those happy endings. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And even my husband will watch them with me because you know what? They're feel good movies. Yeah. And it makes you feel good and see the good in people and be reminded. And so I love that. Now, is there a mentor or someone in your life that had a profound effect on you in some way? Who and why?
Yeah, I've had a few. I will say my first mentor was my chiropractic friend, Karen, who would show up at my house when I was having panic attacks and who would bring me back and would calm me down, who talked to me about how much God loved me, who made me realize that I had worth in the Lord, that I wasn't what I thought I was because I thought I was fine. So I would say she was a big, big influence in my life when I had nobody. I mean, I felt like I had nobody. Obviously, I had my husband, but I still felt like I wasn't worthy,
Yeah. We have that. We have that root in the past. That's the past of of where we had come from and why our hearts are so passionate in these arenas of heart healing, I call it. I love that. And the other question, if you could sit down with anyone, past or present, for a cup of coffee or what have you, who would it be and why?
It would be Esther from the Bible, because that woman is so brave. And I want to sit down and just pick her brain and say, how did you do that? How did you go straight?
She's boss babe, as we like to say now, or she's the woman who kicked butt. Yeah.
And I mean, you know that you could die, and yet you went and you stood before the king, and that's to me, amazing. That kind of faith to me is it's inspiring. So yes, it would be Esther who I would sit and have a
fabulous answer. And note that she prepared. So that's something we could take away when there's a big challenge coming or something happened or bad news. Go to God immediately and start preparing your heart, preparing your spirit to receive information, to receive the breakthrough wisdom of what to do. Like there could be one step, one phone call to make, and she prepared before she went in there and had everyone else join her in community. Yeah. So I love that. I can't remember. Oh, do you have your favorite? I know there's so many. I'm asking this like crazy. Yeah, favorite scripture or affirmation, because my room is full of them. But do you have one that really resonates with you?
I do. I have what I call my life verse, and there's a reason for that. It's Psalm 121. Okay, I look up to the heaven, to the mountains. Where do my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Okay, and obviously the whole verse, but I have that all over my house. And the reason is because when my mom was passing away, when my mom was dying, I wasn't ready to let her go. I was fighting the Lord, and we were sitting at a stoplight, and I'll never forget it because there's a few times that verse came into being. But I was in the back, and Casting Crowns has a song called I Will Praise You in the Storm, I think it's called, and it had that verse in it. So I put the CD. So I kept hearing in my head, I was sitting in a red light, and God was saying, play the song. And I'm like, nope, not playing it. Nope, not doing it. I'm so stubborn. And so I said, oh, no. And I turned on the radio, and it comes on. And my son, who is sleeping in the back, turns around and goes, God's talking to your mom. And then it goes back to sleep again. And I'm like, so at that moment, I knew that I had to let my mom go. She was going into hospice and things were moving along. Yeah. And even when my son, because all this happened during the time that we were having treatment for my son, and he was getting a lot of cards at the time. And he got one card from Miss Ann. No, not Miss Ann. I forget the name right now. But anyway, I think it was Miss Ann. And it was the Casting Crown song. And he looked at me and goes, Mom, this is not for me. This is for you. Yeah. And I'm not kidding you. A day later, my dad called. My mom had fainted in the bathroom, was going in the hospital, and that began her road toward her leaving us.
Yeah, when God speaks, he sends it to like a threesome, usually like a confirmation. He'll bring the same message in a few times. So you definitely understand Oh, I'm so glad you joined us today, Ileana. Leon. Now, folks, you guys get her books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Fear Less Living, and On the Edge of Truth, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. And you can find her at Instagram. Her name, Ileana Leon, author, Ileana Leon, author. And same thing at Facebook, Ileana Leon, author. It's a period before the author. But go check her out and get the books, and she'd love to hear from you. She'd love to hear how her tools were of help, and that's her heart. Thank you for sharing your story. I know you stepped out in faith today, and it matters. It's a difference, and that's what we're here to say for others. So before we say the final goodbye, God is the God of transformation. He takes your junk and turns it to jewels. So go check out my book as well on Amazon. And listen, wherever you are, you're not alone. You matter. You're valued. God sees you, and he will hear you, and he responds. That's the greatest news ever.